Today we're going to talk about the recent Supreme Court ruling on Hobby Lobby.
Hello, and welcome to Disenthrall, the show where we talk about politics, philosophy, and current events. I'm Ryan LaMarche.
And I'm Patrick Smith. So to start out, I think it's best that we go over the full timeline of all the events leading up to the big Supreme Court case that's been so controversial.
Right. All right. So all this started August 1st, 2011, whenever the Affordable Care Act was put into law. So contraception was added to the list of preventative services covered by the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act that would be provided without any cost sharing requirements. So, they didn't have to put in any money, then they would receive these benefits from their employers.
Okay.
Right. So, and then of course...
Who didn't have to put in any money?
It says that would be provided without any cost sharing requirements from the employee. So...
Okay.
Yeah. And then, it was supposed to be like a year later, the mandate was going into effect, and these employers would have to provide these services to their employees or else they would be fined. Of course, that has now been delayed like 3 times, so we're looking more of like 2015, 2016, whenever the mandate is actually going to be...
The employer mandate.
Yeah, the employer mandate.
The employee mandate is...
The individual mandate is already in effect January 1st of this year.
Of 2014. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so get your health care or else you're going to be penalized.
Fined. Stolen from.
Oh, is it fine? Oh, penalized it sounds a little too rough.
Yeah,
too harsh.
Not tax.
Too harsh.
Not tax. All right.
Yeah, the Supreme Court made that clear. All right.
Not a tax.
Okay.
They're just going to take your money anyway.
So then, in September of 2012, Hobby Lobby files a suit to the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Oklahoma, which is a mouthful, over the federal mandate to provide 4 specific potentially life-threatening drugs and devices, which are Plan B, which is also called the morning after pill, Ella, I think is what it's called, which is an emergency contraceptive, the copper intrauterine device, and the intrauterine device with progestin. So
there's also a rod, like an implant for the rod was one of them, I think, too, right?
So this is not what I got off the website. These are the 4 that they listed. I'm not sure. Now, the owners of Hobby Lobby, David and Barbara Green, claimed that the Health and Human Services mandate violated their personal religious beliefs and their religious freedom. The Greens stood behind the Religious Freedom Act of 1993, which prohibits the government from substantially burdening persons' exercise of religion, even if the burden results from a rule of general applicability.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm really not trying to...
This is the Supreme Court verbiage they used in their final briefing.
Yeah, I was actually going to back up. I missed something you said earlier, so I'm sorry. I'm not trying to derail you. But you said, I think when you were talking about the medications involved, I think you said 4 deadly medications. Okay. Obviously, that means deadly to like a fetus. Yeah,
so, this is... Hobby Lobby's language. It's 4 specific potentially life-threatening drugs or devices. So it didn't really actually say like.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify whose language that was. So
it's Hobby Lobby's language.
All right. Go back
so, anyways, a person's exercise of religion, even if the burden results from a rule of general applicability, unless the government demonstrates that application of the burden to the person is 1. In furtherance of a compelling government interest, and 2,
can you summarize? This is the Oklahoma Supreme Court. Okay, miniature Supreme Court. What is this?
No, this is the big Supreme Court. Oh, this is their language.
Okay, I thought we were in Oklahoma still.
Yeah. I just wanted to say like. Because the Supreme Court, I thought they put it kind of well of why Hobby Lobby decided to bring this case to court in the first place. Okay. So this is why. Basically, it's just because they believe that the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993 was on their side. What was for their beliefs.
Meaning?
That it protected them from having to provide these 4 birth control pills and devices
for religious reasons.
Yes, for religious reasons. Okay. That's basically it. Okay.
And that was the Big Daddy Supreme Court.
No, yeah, who said that?
Okay,
yes,
okay.
But they're right now. They're in the U.S. District Court of Western District of Oklahoma. Okay. And then November, so that's 2 months later, the U.S. District Court of Western District of Oklahoma denies Hobby Lobby's request for a preliminary injunction to halt the enforcement of the federal mandate. So an injunction means that you temporarily don't have to, are not required to provide that service, and they said, no, you have to do it, basically. And then Hobby Lobby appeals to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit for emergency relief from the federal mandate. So they appealed to the Court of Appeals, which is like the normal thing to do.
Okay.
Then a month later, December 2012, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit denies emergency relief. So they just outright denied their case. They're like, screw you guys, we don't care about it. Or maybe I'm putting words in their mouth, but they're just like, it's not worthy of being appealed, basically. Okay. So this is where it kind of changes for them, because due to now that it's done, they've been denied. Now, in February 2013, 84 total amicus or friends of the court briefs are filed to let the case be heard by the Supreme Court.
Okay.
So this is what happens whenever you get denied.
By the big Supreme Court.
Yes.
Okay.
This is what happens when you get denied by like the Court of Appeals. Like, people can actually file these briefs and be like, hell no, we want to hear this in the Supreme Court. We want to know what your decision is going to be. Okay. So it's kind of a cool thing. Like, that's kind of. So
the general public can sort of demand a Supreme Court hearing?
It's not really the general public. These are people, the people filing the briefs are ranging from U.S. senators to law professors.
So you have to be important.
I think it's probably better if you're important, because then, because people look for that, and these people like, oh, you're a law professor? Well, you probably know something.
All right.
And then by an almost 3-1 margin, these briefs favored Hobby Lobby.
Okay.
So it just kind of gives you a kind of a hint of where this is going.
Based on the religious freedom defense.
Yes.
Okay.
And then June 2013, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit overturns their original decision, and they return the case back to the U.S. District Court of Western District of Oklahoma.
Oh my God, this is so...
Yeah,
this is justice in the works.
yeah. So this has already been like, we're coming up on a year here pretty soon.
Okay.
July of 2013, the U.S. District Court of Western District of Oklahoma grants Hobby Lobby its preliminary injunction against the federal mandate. And then in September of 2013, so now it's like officially been a year, the federal government appeals. The federal government now, like the Obama administration, the Health and Human Services, people are pissed off because this is happening. They're finally like, okay, we're going to appeal the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit's decision in the Hobby Lobby case to the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court.
Okay. Then, so the Health and Human Services did that?
Yeah, okay. Like it says the federal government, but the case is the Secretary of Health and Human Services against Hobby Lobby.
V. Hobby Lobby? Something like that? Okay.
Yeah. Right. And then Hobby Lobby files a brief with the U.S. Supreme Court agreeing with the federal government that the U.S. Supreme Court should hear its case, as it raises important questions about the right to religious freedom.
All right.
And then November 2013, the U.S. Supreme Court agrees to take up Burwell versus Hobby Lobby, which is previously Sebelius versus Hobby Lobby, but they had to change as secretaries.
The Feds v. Hobby Lobby, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
A landmark case and all that kind of stuff. March of 2014, the U.S. Supreme Court heard oral arguments for the case on March 25th to determine whether the government has the power to force family business owners to act against their faith based solely on the company's form of organization. June 2014, so we're coming up to the present time here, the Supreme Court issued its 5-4 ruling in favor of Hobby Lobby.
Okay, so 5-4, pretty close.
Yeah, it's a pretty, of course, there's just,
party line split?
Yeah, the party line split. Like these justices are supposed to be completely unbiased, but they take a side.
Of course.
They're biased. Everybody knows it, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it was a party split, So...
I'm not even going to get into my opinions on the Supreme Court today.
Two things that are important about this decision. One is, of course, the purpose of the court case, the whole religious freedom thing. But also, the majority decision could open a door to other closely held corporations seeking to withhold coverage for other medical procedures at odds with the firm's religious beliefs. Mm-hmm. So other firms are right now in legal battles for the exact same reason, and this now opens the door for them to win their cases, basically.
Any examples of other things besides this?
No, it's a lot of, there are a lot of companies that are in legal battles right now for the exact same thing that Hobby Lobby is. Yeah. This also strikes a blow against against Obamacare and could open the door for more exemptions from the dreaded mandate.
Okay.
I put dreaded in there.
Dreaded. That was your language.
Ryan, you're not being unbiased. All right. So now that you got the timeline down, we're going to move on to what's the typical, stereotypical kind of woman going to say when they hear about this case.
Yeah, what are the major complaints?
Yeah. So one of the phrases that you're going to hear over and over and over and over and over and over again until you get tired of hearing it, and then you want to kill yourself.
I have a feeling I know what this is.
My body, my choice.
Yep.
So this is a phrase that many women say in defense or against Hobby Lobby in this case. And basically it's them saying that it's my body and I should have control over it, not some suit in a smoke-filled boardroom somewhere high up where I have no influence. So they want control of their own body, and they don't want anybody else telling them how they do.
Hypocritical. Just saying.
We're going to get to that.
Oh yeah.
We're going to get to that. Also, there are some health benefits from taking birth control. So some women take birth control for health-related needs. Now, this is an actual valid complaint amongst most women because they do take birth control to help with many health conditions.
There's a number of things that is actually...
Yeah, several things. We looked at, and there's a whole list, several things. The last thing I had is that I want to be able to have sex without the fear of becoming pregnant.
Right.
So that's a very selfish thing that they brought into the argument.
So the second thing though is not really related to this though, right?
Oh no!
Right.
I'll bring that up. I'll bring that up in my discussion too. Right now, we're just talking about what are the common things that women are saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got I always have too many notes. So as I'll just dive into this. Interrupt me.
Okay.
Bring your own points, please.
Yeah.
Okay. So I kind of broke it down into three primary issues. We had contraceptives and abortion, employers, corporations providing health insurance, and what's my third one? Employees' right to privacy. Those were kind of the three big areas that I thought this pertained to. So contraceptives and abortion. Many people believe, and okay, so let's just do this. This is a lot of sticky stuff that we just need to kind of get out of the way. Mm-hmm. Many people believe that once a fertilized egg has implanted itself in the womb, that the fetus is a living human being, deserving of all of the same protections that each of us enjoy. This is a very controversial subject. Luckily, the Hobby Lobby case has almost nothing to do with it. Suffice it to say that some people hold this belief very strongly. So we don't have to really kind of get into a lot of the kind of abortion debate.
Yeah, that's a whole other bucket of issues.
Whole another 5 episode.
Yeah, that would take 5 hour long episodes. Yeah. Season 2 of abortion versus pro-life versus pro-choice. Here we go.
Yeah, it's like me and I'm beating you bloody and you're like, yeah. All right.
I didn't even want to take this side. Holy shit.
All right. So suffice it to say, some people hold this belief very, very strongly. These people also choose to act on those beliefs by not wanting to pay for or to have their money in any way contribute to the use of those specific contraceptives or abortifacient medications. So that's a critical point. The second one, employers, corporations providing health insurance. And this is just kind of some general background American history. Employers have for quite some time now been in a position of providing healthcare to the vast majority of Americans. Nearly 2/3 of Americans under retirement age, under 65, rely on healthcare coverage from their employer. So that kind of, asks the question, why do most American employers provide healthcare? As with most other problems in this country, this one was created by the government. During World War II, the federal government instituted laws that prevented its employers from raising or hiring new employees at higher wages. This forced companies to find other ways to compete for labor. One of the ways they did this was to begin offering health insurance to their employees, whereas before that wasn't kind of on the table. It wasn't a benefit. Well, I can't pay you more, but wow, I can give you health insurance, right, mm-hmm. for a lot cheaper. So, but even after those immoral laws relating to wage fixing were repealed, this healthcare system remained. And this is kind of to be expected too, right? So once Once two companies or multiple companies start competing in any marketplace, not just labor, over anything, and an item is thrown in as something that's competed over. It could be a feature of a product. It could be an added service. Once something like that's out there, all the companies will always want to maintain that on their list of things why their product or service is better than their competition's.
Labor is a product. So
absolutely.
So yeah, there's a way to have a competitive advantage over getting your labor too.
Yeah. So like no company will want to not have that on their list anymore because could be pointed out by their competition as a weakness. It's
kind of created a new standard because any employer now that doesn't provide healthcare coverage is not even a viable option for most people.
I was just about to say. So for the purposes of staying on topic, let's skip the discussion on why employers being so intertwined in people's healthcare is a bad thing. Let's stick to the details that pertain to the Hobby Lobby case. So, who actually pays for the healthcare that employers provide? Most often, healthcare in America that is provided by employers is paid for by both the corporation and the employees enrolled in the healthcare plans. Employees pay for the healthcare through monthly premiums that allow them to stay enrolled in their chosen plan. Employers contribute to the healthcare plans by various means, usually matching employee premium payments, paying a flat percentage, or through some other arrangement with a healthcare insurance provider. It should also be noted that it's marked as an expense for the company, so they can write it off in their taxes. But still, they are usually paying for half on average.
Yeah, I talk about that in my discussion too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Employees cover this extra expense, like I said, for their employees as an added benefit to entice better workers. Well, maybe we used to be able to say that, but these days, the costs to an employee acquiring health insurance outside their employer has become so expensive that it leads most employees to simply require this as a basic prerequisite for accepting any position at any company. In a way, this eliminates healthcare insurance as a benefit provided by employers and instead makes it simply something that all employers have to provide once they reach a certain level and start hiring a certain, quality or type of employee, professional employee. Mm-hmm. All right. So that was kind of the second category.
Right.
They're just blowing through these. The third category is employees' right to privacy. And this is where it gets kind of fun, right? Or self-abuse.
Privacy. Or lack thereof in this country.
Yeah. All right. So some healthcare plans cover products and services that are not medical necessities, that are not even preventative measers, that are commonly used medications that improve or that support various lifestyle activities.
Yeah, do they cover anything enlarging wise?
In this case,
I'm talking about both sexes here.
Oh dear.
Oh no.
Oh dear. In this case, specifically things like Viagra, Cialis.
Yeah, there we go. There's enlargement.
Birth control pills, as well as things like the morning after pill. So in practice, you have a system where employers and employees pool their resources for the purposes of sometimes providing these products and services. Generally speaking, most employees and employers don't have issues with their money being used to provide products or services that they will never even use. For example, most men don't have a problem with some of their healthcare premiums being used to cover the expense of the female coworkers' breast exams or breast cancer medications, even though they will most likely never have breast cancer. Because, well, I guess most likely, I think it's possible for men to get breast cancer. So maybe this is a bad example, but the point still stands.
Yeah, men can get breast cancer. It's just a lower percentage, a lower probability. Okay. Yeah.
Because the men understand that a portion of the female employees' premiums will probably go to cover things that are unique to a man's healthcare needs. Likewise, most female employees and employers, notice I said both, female employees and employers.
You could have gone with like testicular cancer. Like women don't have to worry about that.
Okay. In fact, I do. Likewise, most female employees and employers have no problem with a portion of their healthcare premiums going to support the purchase of Viagra or prostate treatments for male employees because they understand that a portion of the men's premiums will sometimes go to cover things that are unique to female medical needs, such as breast exams or costs associated with pregnancy. So there's just kind of mutual understanding.
Correct.
It generally allows for all parties to maintain a strong degree of privacy surrounding the medical care that they use their health insurance for. The men don't need to know which women are getting breast exams. The women don't need to know which men are getting Viagra prescriptions. They don't need to know because there's a mutual understanding in place that says it's okay for either party to use their health care for these needs. That mutual understanding is important because that is what is the exception here. For better or worse, this system has functioned now for quite some time. Unfortunately, in recent years, the development of certain forms of contraceptive medication and abortive medications have upset this system. There are people that believe very strongly that the use of certain forms of contraception is morally wrong, specifically the forms of medication that affect an already fertilized or sometimes an implanted living fetus. They see this as murder. And as pretty much we should all be able to understand, no one would ever want a portion of their own resources being used for murder, right? So whether or not we define it as murder, we can understand that anyone would not want to be forced to have their resources used for it, right?
Yeah, one interesting point that maybe isn't covered by anyone right now is that we're always talking about the employers don't want to do this because it violates their religious beliefs, but you just said that the employees are putting the money into this pool of money to help with everybody else's healthcare costs. Maybe the employees don't want to put money into something that violates their religious beliefs also.
Yeah, I wonder what would happen if the employees sued.
Yeah.
To be exempted from paying for other people. So, it's just as valid of a moral proposition for an employer who doesn't want to contribute their money to an employee that doesn't want to contribute their money.
Right.
It's the exact same argument.
Yeah, well, it's just it's maybe a stronger argument because people see employers as these like non-human figures, like these people that don't really care about the little man, who are just like up there in the ivory towers and aren't mixed in with the common folk down below. People don't see employers as like people that care about the common folk, or they're not really human. They see more of just like a company logo instead of a person. So if we go on the side of employees not wanting to contribute money to things that they find morally wrong, then people might have a stronger connection with that.
Stronger, right? Yeah. For a minute, I thought you were going the other way, but no. I think people would have a stronger reaction to an employee not wanting to contribute.
Like say, like they have a person that works right across the desk from them, and they know them and that they're their friend, and they find out like that they agree differently about what their money is going to in terms of healthcare. It's like, wow, that would be a lot more impactful than their employer disagreeing with them. Even
if they didn't find out from a fellow employee, even if they just, said, hey, insurance company, here's my premium, but make sure none of it goes to coverage over these items because, of course you can't. Yeah. But you should, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So
just like, that's kind of like the proposition I was making towards you, where you control where your taxes go. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. It's exactly the same moral argument, right? Yeah. In the case of Hobby Lobby, it is the employers who refuse to allow a portion of their resources to be spent on something that they feel is immoral. So the employers modified their healthcare plans that they provide to omit coverage of these objectionable products and services. This allows them to continue to offer healthcare coverage to their employees without breaching their ethics. I think it's important to point out that Hobby Lobby in this case is not gaining any private healthcare information on its female employees. If one of their employees chooses to go out and purchase some of these products that their employer has chosen not to provide or has chosen not to subsidize through the healthcare plan, there is of course no mechanism that would cause the employer to be notified about their purchasing this stuff. So no actual breach of privacy is taking place.
Right.
That's very important because I think a lot of the accusations leveled against Hobby Lobby is that it's none of their business. Mm-hmm. Well, they're not.
It's like they agree too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is none of our business. We don't want to know if you're taking part in these if you're interacting with these items or not. We don't care.
We don't need to know. They're not asking them to tell them.
We don't want to have to be forced to pay you for them. That's
exactly.
all it is.
Exactly.
So which it is forced. So.
Absolutely. So that's kind of the end of my kind of initial points. I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to hit before I kind of flew on by.
Yeah. It's a lot. There's a lot of like factual stuff in there too. So yeah. A lot of let's determine what conception is and all.
That's kind of like now we get into more. Yeah. Not really opinion, but
this is the juicy opinion kind of stuff.
Yeah, this is why this is the part where we get in trouble.
This is where we get called misogynistic
or something, I'm sure. Right? Okay, so first I think it's absolutely critical that we define our terms. What is a contraceptive? A contraceptive is a device or drug serving to prevent pregnancy. So now it's important that we define the term pregnancy. And this is where definitions start to change depending on who you're talking to. If you talk to Barbara Levy, Vice President for Health Policy for the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists,
she sounds like a wonderful woman.
You will hear her say that pregnancy begins once a fertilized embryo has implanted in the uterus. The president of Hobby Lobby, on the other hand, Steve Green, he would say that life begins at conception. In his view, becoming pregnant, conception, and fertilization all happen at the same time.
Right.
So there isn't a difference between when the egg is fertilized and when the egg implants, in his mind.
Yeah. So he has a different view from the medical professional.
I would say from the general medical opinion on when a pregnancy begins.
Yes. Which it's more of the religious-based opinion that he has.
Probably, yeah. Yep. So this change in definition of what constitutes a pregnancy is where this whole thing kind of takes two different roads. The next is the term abortifacient. An abortifacient drug is a drug that causes abortion, meaning it ends an existing pregnancy. Mm-hmm. So a contraceptive prevents pregnancy and an abortifacient ends an already existing one. Hobby Lobby has made it very clear that the former is okay with them and the latter is absolutely not. So they don't have a problem with things that prevent pregnancy. They have a problem with things that end existing ones. And of course, by their definition, an existing pregnancy is as soon as the egg's fertilized. Mm-hmm. That is an existing pregnancy, and they are not okay with supporting anything that ends that. They feel that a woman taking an abortifacient drug is committing an immoral act. And I think it's easy for most people to understand that if you think something is immoral, you absolutely don't want to support it in any way. And it would be very much a crime to force someone to kind of act against their ethics. Yeah. Right.
If you take this to like an extreme level, most people think it's immoral. Like it's not even related. People will probably be like, "Oh, it's not even related to this." But if people think it's immoral to murder someone, but if you're like forced to, it's like you got to kill this person right now or else, then you'd be like, "Holy shit, you're going to do everything in your power to not do that."
Well, yeah, there's an additional crime taking place. Not only is there murder happening, but now there's someone being forced to kind of do something against their own morals.
I wasn't even connecting it to the abortion fact. I was just saying if you murder, just like killing someone. That's
what okay. Yeah, sure.
But I can see the connection.
I'm trying to sail the ship way around abortion for this episode because.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't even trying to bring it to abortion. I was just trying to do another case where people find something immoral and might be forced to do it.
Yeah. All right. So the issue, again, like I said, is in the definition of pregnancy. If we use the generally accepted scientific definition of pregnancy, an abortifacient would be limited to drugs like methotrexate combined with this doesn't matter at all, misoprostol, or something called RU486. These drugs are clearly abortifacient as they were designed specifically to bring an end to a pregnancy. However, these types of drugs specifically are not covered by Obamacare and as such have nothing to do with this case. That's using the general scientific definition of a pregnancy. If we use Hobby Lobby's definition of pregnancy, though, an abortifacient now includes things like morning after pills, IUDs, the contraceptive rod implant called Implanon. In fact, these are some of the items that Hobby Lobby is objecting to because by their definition, they end an existing pregnancy. The problem is that Obamacare mandates that all health insurance plans cover these 4 items, clearly violating the owners of Hobby Lobby's consciences. Mm-hmm. So that is the whole kind of crux of this entire discussion, right? The definition of pregnancy, the owners of Hobby Lobby's morality, right? And their ability to kind of determine what their resources go to help or to facilitate, right?
Right.
Okay, so I also think it's important that we define what a corporation is. A corporation is a legal entity brought into existence by various state governments. A corporation is, quote, a group of people authorized to act as a single entity, legally a person, and recognized as such in law, end quote. So what are corporations for? Corporations provide a few distinct advantages to someone wanting to operate a business. A corporation can live forever. long after the person that started the business is dead. A corporation makes it possible to easily divide ownership into shares, which can then be sold and transferred. So if maybe I want to start a business, but I know that I'm probably not going to want to keep it around for the rest of my life, I want to build it and then sell it to someone else.
Happens a lot. Yeah.
Corporations through shares allow people to kind of divide and sell and transfer. It's like it's the same benefit that we all get from, for instance, the dollar bill, right? It allows us to divide value and transfer it among people in pieces instead of, saying, well, here's the whole company or things like that. However, the primary benefit of a corporation is that its owners are protected from personal liability on company debts, on company penalties, and on company obligations. This means that the most an investor or business entrepreneur can lose in any venture is the amount that they have invested in it. And
this is it's extremely important because without these laws in place, many people wouldn't start their own company to begin with. We wouldn't have companies started by people.
Yeah, the discussion on, and this is kind of my next paragraph, was like whether or not corporations should exist as a legal entity is definitely up for debate, but probably not in this episode because that's another big one. So corporations exist as a fictional legal entity created and brought into existence by government, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of negative effects that giving business owners that shield.
It's like a two-edged sword because the definition of why people create corporations is to spread liability around to several different people. So that can be in a good sense and a bad sense. It's like, if they're sued or if something bad happens in a corporation, then a lot of people take the blame for it and are able to compensate different parties for what they've done. But also it's like, I'm not 100% liable for my actions. It's like I can get away with a lot of shit.
So I think the biggest function of a corporation is reduction in risk for the owners, right? Yeah. So they only lose what they put in. So if they're fined by the government for their company doing something evil, that fine only affects the company's money, not theirs or the personal assets.
Right.
It's
a way to just separate yourself from your corporation that you started. It's like a wall that you
protect your assets.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, so I would love to have a discussion on corporations in general, whether or not we need them at all,
right?
And all the things that are broken with our current system of corporations. But for now, let's stick to Hobby Lobby and leave that conversation for later. What's relevant for this case is that a corporation is owned and operated by a specific group of individuals that have the corporation as a means to more safely conduct their business. It's their business, though, to do with as they please. In no way does it become some sort of communal property where other people get to have a say in how it's managed. It is owned and operated by its owners and operators. And that point is very important for this discussion. Next, I want to talk about the employer-employee relationship. This is fun. And one of the least talked about but most important of our liberties is the freedom of association. We should all be free to associate with whom we want. Conversely, we should all be free from association with whom we do not want. That means that if I want to be your friend and you want to be my friend, then it would be immoral for someone or some government to prevent that association. That means that if I want to be your friend, but you don't want to be my friend, then it would also be immoral for someone or some state to force that association. So it goes both ways. One of the most common and important forms of association is when one person freely chooses to trade or barter with another. That could be a person choosing to sell someone else something on eBay. That could be someone agreeing to paint someone's house and in exchange for an amount of money, or a basket of cookies, or whatever else both people agree on.
Right.
As long as there is no force involved in the relationship, this is one of the most important liberties that we have. So this absolutely includes a situation where a person running a business offers to freely associate with someone who would like to receive money in exchange for their services. That is freedom of association. This also absolutely includes a situation where a person running a business offers to freely associate with someone who does not agree to the circumstances of the arrangement and wishes not to associate with that business or person. That person should be free to walk away from that job. So by this point, you can probably see where I'm going with this. Simply stated, if these people feel that Hobby Lobby refusing to pay for certain drugs or for certain healthcare services is a deal breaker for them, then they should simply refuse to work there. Problem solved.
Right.
So
just like healthcare became a factor in the competitiveness of employers looking for labor, now this has contributed to the competitive nature or the competitive market of labor in terms of Hobby Lobby and their competitors.
Yep. No one, employee or employer or friend or enemy, should ever exist in a state of forced association. And that includes situations where the Hobby Lobby would be forced to provide some service if they want to associate with employees. That is a forced change to a free association. And by free association, I mean you have an employer that wants to hire somebody and you have an employee that wants to work for that employer. And so for any entity, the state included, the state especially, to kind of shove their way into that exchange is absolutely immoral.
Right.
So no one should ever be forced to act against their own principles. For if you are prevented from acting on your principles, you are in fact effectively not free to hold your own principles, which is a terrible thing.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So you can't say that someone is free to hold their opinions or to hold their own principles if you also believe that they're not free to act on them. So if you're going to prevent someone from acting on a principle,
that's a huge basis of the against me argument is that, I'm free to have my opinion. Well, am I free to also act upon my opinion?
I'm going to put Stefan Molyneux' face really big right here.
Yeah.
Because, and we'll link that video as well. It's an amazing way to show the gun in the room, the force behind government.
Yeah. It's really incredible. The way that you're able to connect something to every single one of these huge arguments that people have on a consistent basis.
And I'm sure we'll mention him many times in the future, but if you haven't heard of Stefan Molyneux or his channel, Freedomain Radio, please check him out. We'll link it in the description.
Yeah.
So opponents of this ruling can take some solace because there are some downsides to a company that takes this sort of stance. And to be perfectly fair, let's talk about the downsides. As a result of those their decisions with their employees' healthcare plans, Hobby Lobby is going to have a more difficult time in the employment marketplace. Employers compete for good labor. They compete in a plethora of ways: benefits, working environment, hours, compensation. Things as simple as how comfortable the chairs that are provided are can sometimes sour an employee's opinion of working at a company. And make no mistake, good help is truly hard to find. So every stand that an employer takes on an issue such as this will absolutely eliminate a subsection of the possible labor pool, thereby making it more difficult and most likely more expensive for them to find and hire and retain good people. An extreme example that makes the point would be if, let's say, we had an employer in Texas that refused to hire any people of Hispanic descent. Well, there's a lot of Hispanic people in Texas, right? Mm-hmm. So that person or company instantly just made their search for a potential employee 36% more difficult. 36%.
Yep.
And this is a generalized number based on population statistics,
right.
Not broken down by any particular profession.
Right.
But it makes the point.
Mm-hmm.
They've not only handicapped their company, but by refusing all of the potentially outstanding employees within that 36%, they have given all of their competition that have no problem hiring Hispanics a 36% advantage over them.
Right.
So bringing it back to this topic, using that same example would be for whatever percent of women refuse now to work at Hobby Lobby because of their decision on this healthcare issue, they are handicapped to that same degree against any competition they have because their competition is going to have access to that extra employee pool.
Yeah. I'm just kind of curious who those women are.
Yeah.
The ones that don't work.
I wonder what the percentage is. I don't know if there's any easy way to.
The percentages and who they are. I don't know.
Yeah. So.
And what other company they would go to.
This is the same reason why companies don't take a lot of political stands, because every time they take a stand on a political issue, they alienate all the customers.
Yeah. Well, think about Target.
What do you mean?
Whenever they made that huge anti-gay statement.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that was a big blow against them probably for their potential employee pool.
So in the same way that you can eliminate customers from your customer pool, you can eliminate employees from the labor pool, making it more difficult on your company and easier on the competition. Yeah. So that is a part of this debate. They are not getting off scot-free. There is going to be definitely some negative effects to this. Finally, I want to address a lot of the rhetoric that's been thrown around this case, things like you brought up earlier.
Rhetoric!
This kind of gets away from the facts and more to just kind of pointing out the inaccuracies involved here, right? Mm-hmm. So particularly the groups that are claiming that Hobby Lobby is preventing women from being able to have control over their own bodies, chanting, "My body and my choice."
Sing it. Preach it.
Preach it.
Wait, that's ironic. Don't preach it. What? We're talking about religious freedom here. Preach it.
Oh, dear. So first of all, hey, my voice cracked like a 13-year-old. Right. You see that? Yeah. First of all, I would like to point out that birth control is not a healthcare issue.
Uh-oh.
To be perfectly accurate, for an extremely small minority of women, birth control is absolutely a healthcare issue. But for the vast majority, it is simply an auxiliary method of preventing pregnancy. Mm-hmm. Not something that they need to live, and not something that they need to treat the symptoms of a disease. Yeah. Chemotherapy is a healthcare issue. Painkillers after a broken leg are a healthcare issue. Pills to allow you to have unprotected sex with someone, however, is not a healthcare issue.
And I guarantee you that there's a lot of people out there that never even got anywhere close to thinking about this at all.
Absolutely.
This point.
I've never heard this before.
Yeah. And whenever I heard it, I was like, holy crap, that's correct.
Yeah. Aside from one or two people, I've never heard anybody think about this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You don't get sick if you don't have your birth control. And you won't find a bunch of guys complaining because their boss refused to pay for a box of condoms. So right off the bat, we need to calm this rhetoric down just a smidge.
Yeah.
Secondly,
can I just say something real quick?
Please.
Yeah. So you're talking about the guys.
I've talked enough around here.
The guys with the condoms. You're saying that they're not being boisterous in terms of like telling their employer like, what the hell? Where's our condoms? Where the hell are our condoms? Like they're not like complaining about it.
Yeah, because I think you said.
But they do. The employer through this mandate does cover condoms for males just to cover that.
Yes.
And also, whenever you're talking about birth control not being like a healthcare necessity, it's not a healthcare issue. Mm-hmm. It's funny because whenever you look at condoms, they're actually more of a healthcare item due to the fact that they prevent the spread of sexually transmitted infections.
And
whereas birth control does not prevent the spread of sexually transmitted infections. So condoms are more of a healthcare item than birth control is.
Well, that's definitely an interesting take on that subject. Yeah. My point was the being vocal about it, and you have a better point though. I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, now I am a woman hater, and starting my own revolution against women.
Welcome.
Based on that.
Welcome to the club. Apparently, I'm sure we're going to get labeled things. Now, so. Secondly. Nothing is preventing any of these women working at Hobby Lobby from going out and using their money that they earn to purchase whatever healthcare products or services that they want. The owners of Hobby Lobby are simply refusing to help pay for it. They are not requiring that their employees report on when they use these drugs or services. They're not calling for them to be made illegal. They're not threatening their employees with termination if they choose to use these drugs and services. Which, if you think about it, if both sides are actually free to associate with whom they choose, they would certainly have the ability to take those types of actions. But they're not. They are not. They are simply refusing to pay for something that their principles tell them is morally wrong. Right. For the people saying that they don't want their employer telling them what to do, I have this to say. Your employer is not telling you what you can and can't do for your birth control. You, however, are trying to tell your employer what to do with their money in spite of their principles. If it's truly your body, your choice, then it has to also be your employer's body and your employer's choice. We all own our own bodies. We all own the fruits of our own labor. It should be all of our own choices as to where our money goes. And of course, if you're working for an employer who finds it immoral to pay for certain things, or who has employees that may also find, this goes back to what we were saying earlier, if there are employees that also find it immoral to pay for certain things, you always have the choice not to work there. Mm-hmm. Why should a woman's choice override someone else's choice? How is it that one woman's wish to have baby-free, unprotected sex entitles her to use the force of government to rip money from another person against their will? Freedom comes with responsibility. If it's your body, your choice, then it's also your body, your responsibility, not anyone else's. When we become adults, we start making our own choices, but we also no longer get to live off someone else. It's not mommy and daddy's job to pay the electric bill anymore. You no longer get to expect or to even demand to be provided clothes and food and entertainment. You are a grown-up. You pay your own electric bill. If you want that new dress for that fancy dinner, for that movie night, you pay for it. When you're old enough to demand and to expect your own choices, you're old enough to pay for your own damned sex.
Hobby Lobby is not forcing these women not to buy these 4 items. So the women should therefore not force Hobby Lobby to pay for these for them. So, and if someone doesn't agree with that, then there's a problem there.
No one should have the right.
Right.
Yeah.
But whenever you take this issue to the government and say, fix it, the government will not agree with you. They'll be like, okay, let's force someone.
The government is force. Yeah. So anytime the government does anything, it is force.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that goes back to freedom of association. No one has the right to force or modify or restrict an association. And it goes to no one has the right to use force against another person. The non-initiation of force, the non-aggression principle. If you haven't heard of it, maybe we can throw some links up to that, because that's kind of going to be a theme in just about every show I think we ever have, right?
Right.
So it is immoral for anyone to initiate the use of force against anyone else for just about any reason other than self-defense.
Yeah, and which I was saying, like, if you don't agree with that, then you don't agree with what the government is doing.
Right.
And in this case, you shouldn't agree with what the government is doing with this mandate, because they're forcing someone to pay for something that they believe is immoral.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. There is force.
There is always force.
Yes.
There's never a situation.
You don't see it because the government is this huge mix of all this bureaucratic shit that you don't really understand, but there's force in there.
You never see the force because it rarely gets to that point.
If you see the force, then everything is ruined. Like, it's like a magic show where, like, something's happening over here and you got your attention over here, If you see the force, the whole magic trick is ruined.
Exactly. Yeah. Because when people see the force right in front of them, it exposes it for kind of the evil that it is, and people kind of shy back from it. So if you actually saw, maybe let's walk through kind of an example scenario of, like, what would happen if a company stood on their principles and if this ruling went the other direction.
Yeah. Oh,
right.
Man.
So let's show you the gun.
Let's show you what the hell the government would have done.
Let's show you the force, right? Because people are like, oh, they'll just pay a fine. That's not force. They just get fined.
Yeah.
Well, what if Hobby Lobby stands by their principles and refuses to pay that fine?
Yeah.
What happens?
IRS.
They get a letter.
Yeah.
And what happens when that letter probably summons them to a court date for not paying their fine taxes,
right?
Their Obama taxes or whatever, right?
And how are you supposed to define this? How are we going?
Right. So let's say they show up to court and refuse to pay after they're ordered to, or let's say they don't show up to court. Either way, the same thing happens.
Because they feel like they don't need to go to court because they're literally just standing by what they believe morally.
They are peaceably minding their own business and refusing to do something.
Why the hell should I have to go to court for something that I just inherently believe is immoral?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So either way that goes, it ends up being escalated. What happens next? Well, probably their business license gets revoked. Mm-hmm. So then what happens? They continue running their business because why shouldn't they be able to? It's their effort. They have a lot of employees they're helping. It's their livelihood. It's their employees' livelihood. Who is the government to tell them that they can't run their business? Mm-hmm. So if they continue running their business after they've had their license revoked, then what happens? Then the government sends people with guns to shut them down.
Yes.
And then what happens if they continue, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if the guys with the guns come and they still are pushing back, then you're going with like a Waco situation here.
They're like, no, we have hobbies, and this is our lobby.
This is the lobby where we perform our hobbies, okay?
And we're going to continue performing our hobbies in our lobby.
Imagine like freaking agents coming to Hobby Lobby being like, put down the picture frame and the plastic plant.
Exactly.
And the beads. Put down the beads.
But no, if these people stood by their principles, and this is the point, if they stood by their principles, this is how it would end up.
Yeah.
If they took it to that far, until they abandon their principle, the government will continue to escalate until someone can see the gun. And the gun gets shown towards the end when they shut them down and they keep doing it and they throw them in jail.
Yeah. And then you like never see the Greens again. Which are the owners of Hobby Lobby, you don't hear
the Greens.
You never see them again, pretty much.
Yeah, so then you actually get a situation where they will be, thrown in jail for not paying taxes.
Well, then they just become a nice bit of profit that private prisons get from the federal government.
Sure.
Yeah.
So they either get thrown in jail, or if they continue to resist, they get shot. Right?
Yeah. So. Which is undesirable. To put it lightly.
Can't really argue with that. But so. You never see the force because it never gets this far, and no reasonable person would can not show up to court. No reasonable person would risk the liability to the IRS of not shutting their company down when they had their business license revoked. No reasonable person would risk their life and their family's livelihood by being thrown in jail for continuing to operate the business.
Well, sadly, I think that people believe in the system and they believe that the system is going to work well for them and it's going to solve the problems that they're having, either with the government or with their employees or anything like that. So, yes, they will go to court because they believe that the system was put in place to solve these problems and it's going to work well. It's going to work in my favor. Yeah,
but just because a reasonable person wouldn't stand that firmly by their principles doesn't make it moral to have a system in place that forces...
It doesn't make it any less wrong that the government is willing to go that far.
Yes.
They're willing at any point to go as far as needed to get the result they need.
Yeah. Maybe I need to summarize it better because I don't think I did a very good job. So the situation that you described, which is 100% accurate as to what would happen, is you have business owners not wanting to pay for certain types of drugs and healthcare that would, if they stood by their principles long and hard enough, would end up in jail or shot if they resisted.
Yes. That's the gist of it.
That's the start and that's the finish. And that is absolutely wrong, right?
Most people would probably call you like that's pretty extreme.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because they haven't seen the gun yet.
Right.
We know about the gun.
It's easy to see if you stand by your principles, you'll see the gun pretty quickly, right?
Yeah. You'll have this like oh shit moment, like this light bulb comes up and you're like, the government uses force to get pretty much everything done that they need to get done.
Everything from property tax to fines for speeding.
Right.
It's all enforced by force.
All right. So something that I read that really bothered me and stood out was an article that was saying that the Obama administration argued that the requirement to provide these services to their employees wasn't a mandate at all, because the corporation or the companies could have just dropped the coverage. And that's all they said. They ended it there. And I was like, right whenever I said that, I was like, at what cost? Because this is pretty much an ultimatum that is like under the surface being made. Like it's an ultimatum. Like you either provide this or let's see what happens if you don't provide it. You incur a fee. Now, the fee for not providing health care coverage to their full-time employees is $2,000 per employee per year. The first 30 full-time employees are exempt. Yay. 30 employees.
Okay.
And this fee is not tax deductible like other contributions to employee premiums. So, as of 2011, Hobby Lobby employs 21,000 people and brings in about $2.28 billion in revenue, according to Forbes. Now, assuming that at least half of those employees are full-time workers, the fee that they're looking at is about $21 million. Now, I bet that the founders of Hobby Lobby would much rather spend that money providing health care coverage for their employees than paying a fee forced upon them forced upon them and the individuals of the United States.
So the argument is, well, if they don't agree, they could just not provide any health insurance and let the government do it.
They just coincidentally didn't say, oh, by the way, you're going to have to pay a fee.
Yeah, here's the flaw. Here's the flaw in that argument. Yeah. How is paying $2,000 per employee to provide health insurance that provides immoral things, in their opinion, any different than paying normal healthcare premiums to provide health insurance that provides immoral things?
Where is that fee money going to? It's going to go to the government, which then goes to the mandatory healthcare that these
provide the exact things that they're
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same damn thing.
Not only is it's specious from a lot of ways, right? So it's morally the same thing. You're still paying for the stuff that you don't feel you should pay for,
right?
And it's also like I said earlier, to run a successful business with any amount of employees, you have to begin, in America at least, covering healthcare. That's just how the system works. That's what all employees come to expect once they get to a certain level. Mm-hmm. So to say, well, they can just stop providing health insurance and pay a fine is not really viable, because I mean I think employees eventually will probably wise up, and when they go to their interviews, they'll say, well, what insurance do you offer? Blue Cross and Blue Cross. Why is this so difficult?
Blue Cross Blue Shield. Yeah.
BCBS or Obamacare. And if they say Obamacare, they'll be like, oh, okay.
Like I was saying before, whenever I was talking about the women's side of issues, is that many women make the point that they're using birth control for health-related reasons. Mm-hmm. Now, this is all good and fine, but they don't realize that the forms of birth control that are needed to help with these health-related issues are still covered by Hobby Lobby.
There's like 6 to 10 actual legitimate healthcare issues, right? Something like that.
Yeah. And so this is not a case of Hobby Lobby against all women, which is what a lot of people would like this to be. They would like to be this a platform for people to stand on, to be against like Hobby Lobby and an association, the Republican Party, and all these other people, like some kind of platform they can stand on in the next election. They're trying to blow it way out of proportion is what they're trying to
do. They fight these battles by applying labels.
Yeah.
If they can call them anti-woman, if they can call them Republican, all these labels will negatively affect their business and that's their goal.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's not a case of Hobby Lobby against all women. It's simply them saying they don't want to be forced to cover life-ending forms of birth control because it goes against their religious beliefs. Mm-hmm. Now, life-ending in terms of what they believe in.
Sure.
Now, all of the misconceptions, misinformation, name-calling, and grasping at straws on this issue is really annoying. It is evidence of a generation of people that have spent their time, their years, developing childlike tendencies rather than critical thinking skills. Because if they actually thought about this issue, studied up on it, understood it, they would understand that Hobby Lobby still covered these forms of birth control that helps women with the health-related issues that are solved by birth control.
Yeah, so any tweet that you see, any quote you see in any news article that says, well, this issue is important to me, this ruling is wrong because I need birth control for XYZ medical issue, that is a completely invalid argument. It has nothing to do with this case, because every birth control, correct me if I'm wrong, every birth control that has anything to do with any of the list of actual healthcare issues is covered by Hobby Lobby.
Still covered.
No problem.
16 forms of birth control.
16 out of 20.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are like male condoms and stuff like that, vasectomy and all that. But it's still covered by Hobby Lobby. This is just something that was easily able for people to digest and grasp onto and use against Hobby Lobby because they have some emotional fire that was lit in their heart and they need to yell about it on some form. They need to get on top of a mountain and they need to scream at the top of their lungs and they need to say something. So this was easy.
Yep. Yeah, going back to my freedom of association, you can take that argument even further. You can say, I don't care if Hobby Lobby doesn't want to pay for any birth control. If that's what they want to do to associate with their employees, there is no moral way to kind of stop that or force that. Any force in that situation between that free association of employees and employers is immoral.
Yeah. I was just trying to say that any claim that Hobby Lobby is just 100% against all women, no questions asked, is a bullshit argument because they're still covering many forms of birth control.
Sure, absolutely.
You can't just say Hobby Lobby hates women, Hobby Lobby is a son of a bitch.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
Why are we even doing this episode? We should have just started with that and walked away.
I know, right? It's just that part really infuriates me because I just hate when people are easy to jump on some kind of stance that is rooted in nothing.
And absolutely nothing.
Yeah. It's learn something.
Yeah.
Like every day, if you're not learning something, you're wasting your life.
Yep. It's this argumentation by bumper sticker. Yeah. Like here's my bumper sticker. What do you got to say about that? Yeah. Well, here's my bumper sticker that defeats your bumper sticker quote. Well,
and if you're really passionate about this issue and women's issues in general, then you should take the time to study up and understand what exactly is going on.
Yep. And what, like maybe...
Instead of taking your time just blabbing about bullshit that doesn't even matter.
Maybe like 0.5% of people that are affected by this actually probably did that research at all.
Yeah. I mean, if you asked me about this like a month ago, before I started reading articles and all that, then I wouldn't have given my freaking stance on it because I didn't know enough. I'm smart enough not to just be like, well, I think, and just take an easy, because I know that most of the shit I'm going to read and most of the political propaganda bullshit, it's not what I need to be saying to other people, because I know that if I do the research, I'm going to be furious about what I would have said.
Yeah. Like, why are we doing this episode? We're two men. Why does this matter to us? For me, it matters. What matters to me is protecting the freedom of association, like I talked about. That's critical. Protecting our ability to freely associate with people. And then just dispelling like all this rhetoric, this my body, my choice hypocrisy just eats at me. And so like I was driven positively by wanting to protect freedom of association, and I was driven negatively by I get so sick of this.
We're not here to like hate on anybody or take one group of people and be like, you guys are fucking morons. We're not here to do that. Right. We're here to cut through all this bullshit, all these lies, and be like, hey, these are the really facts. You should really take them into consideration before you make a judgment about something. Yep.
And then base your decisions on some sort of moral framework, some sort of principle position. Like my principles is freedom. My principle is don't use force against other people to get what you want. Those are my principles, and that's why I have a position in this argument. Yeah. So
it's funny because facts are good. Facts can win you an argument. They can. But it can be hard because whenever you're fighting someone that's extremely emotional about something, they'll find something to throw back at your face that doesn't really like counteract your facts. It just it's like a trump card. It kind of wins the argument in some stupid way that you can't fight against because maybe that person is part of the group that the issue relates to. So if you can find a moral stance, then that allows you to it's like a golden key that you're able to open the door of all this crap that people put up in front of the issue. It's I found a way to win this argument.
Like how many debates do we get into, political and otherwise, where it ends up with you doing a bunch of research and spewing a bunch of facts and saying, hey, I found this study that says this, and but they found their studies that say the opposite and their facts that say the opposite. And you just get in this kind of back and forth shooting arrows, across a fence. It's like sword fighting farts. You can't hit anything because no one agrees with whatever sources you found for whatever studies you use to try and come up with any kind of logical or solid fact. And you get nowhere. But if you have a sense of ethics, if you have a foundation where you draw your conclusions and motivations from, then when you walk into these situations, they become a lot more clear, because all you have to then say is, this is why it's wrong. This is why the government has no right to force Hobby Lobby to provide X, Y, and Z. This is why it's wrong. This is how it should be. And it's a moral reason. It's not because I found a study that said that employers that don't provide for these forms of birth control compete or don't have stock prices as high as their competition that does. We're not, notice we haven't quoted anything like that. We haven't pulled any statistics that says how this may or may not affect the company or anything like this as far as statistics or studies. I'm making a moral argument here. Right. And that's what I always want to do on this show, is I want to show people the underlying ethics behind these issues.
The huge issue. What's the real problem?
Yep.
And before facts and statistics and all that existed in the human race, we were built on a moral foundation. Before all the bullshit was created.
Not saying religious.
We used a moral foundation to create the structures of our life before all the facts and statistics came into existence.
And whether your ethics come from religion, whether your ethics come from some independent principle.
Yeah, just being a pro-human being person. Yeah. I mean, that's...
As long as it's like foundational, as long as it's logical, as long as it's consistent, that's the biggest thing. The biggest requirement for, a serious ethical framework is consistency. That means that you can't have a rule that that calls for one thing to happen to one person and a different thing to happen for a different person in the same situation. Right. It has to be consistency.
And which is happening in this case.
And the consistency is we all have to be free to associate. And that goes for me, that goes for you as friends, that goes for an employee and an employer. They're both people, that nothing has changed in that relationship. There is a freedom of association that has to be preserved. That's consistency.
Yeah.
Using the force of government to make people pay for your shit, even though it may violate my morality, my principles, is an act of evil. You are condoning and supporting violence against others. You are stealing other people's money because it's your body and your choice, but it's not their body, their labor, their efforts, their sweat, their money, and their choice. Only one group of people are actually getting any choice in this world. This has so little to do with healthcare, so little to do with women's choice. This has nothing to do with feminism, nothing to do with a woman's ability to control her own body. This is about a group of people wanting to make choices for other people. And I'm not talking about Hobby Lobby. This is about trying to get the government to force other people to take care of them like children so that they can bear less of the costs of their own sex lives. This is about our right to freely associate with whom we choose. This is about our right to stand by our own conscience and act on our own principles.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. That was the Hobby Lobby case and what we thought about it. Give us a like down below if you liked it. Give us a comment, and I'm
not asking for likes or subscribes. We're not doing it.
We're holding ourselves out again here.
I'm not. Nope.
Okay.
Nope. You know how YouTube works. Use it.
Yeah. Use the tubes.
Yep.
And we have socials if you want to check that out also.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have, so we kind of changed the format up from our first episode.
Yeah.
So if you have any feedback, comments, criticisms, please let us know. Private message, public message, however you want to get it to us. We're trying to figure out kind of what works best.
Yeah, just real quick. Before we did the presentation half scripted and we were reading from a script. Now we just did it like a discussion type of back and forth, just like the discussion half of the video. So just let us know if you liked it better. Before it did kind of get a little bland. So hopefully now I just kind of briefly went over the timeline and
I think it rocked.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot. Thumbs up.
It's the first time I've ever explained it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I should point that out, that like all these ethical and logical arguments that I'm making, this is my first time in a public forum trying to make these arguments. So I might not always do my best, but I'm going to keep trying until I get better at it. Put down the picture frame. Exactly. And the beads. Put down the beads.